Hey everybody, Scott Stevens here with a look at some weather around the country and around the world. Glad to have you with me on this Friday evening, as if we've got nothing better to do on a Friday. It was always kind of tough to go to work and hit the 5, 6, and 10 on a Friday when everybody else was out for dinner, off to the game, or just on a date. And here you are showing up to work, doing what you love to do, doing what you went to college for. It was weather and it was TV, and that made it even better. All right, we're kind of in a transition. We are in a transition as we go from summer to fall. There's always going to be a little bit of fall showing up early, a little bit colder than people would like, but then there are those places where summer's going to hang on. It just does not want to let go, and there are places in the country where that is more regularly the case than otherwise. And right now, that is going to be the Western US, where they have been, and we have been, because that's exactly where I am, hammered by drought. It took hold December, January, gave up a little bit in March, and brought in some coastal showers, some coastal rains. But California has been crispy since the failed monsoon the year before. Back last summer, the monsoon was just weak and anemic, and this one not that much better. So we're seeing accumulation of feet worth of water in some of these mountain locations that have just fallen way shy of what is expected. And we definitely tend to plan irrigation, water, and city demand water usage on what typically is there. And if the water's not there, then we have to make adjustments, and that's where we are at this point in the year. All right, good to see some of you guys coming on board here. Let's jump over to Twitter as we recap what had happened last week with Laura. Now that we've kind of got these hidden cams in and around the coastal areas, and we can see debris, the height, the soap line on your tub. We have that with these kind of disasters where we have water pushing inland. But the new storm surge level found in the wake of Hurricane Laura could go down as the third highest storm surge on record in the United States. This from the Lake Charles National Weather Service, and that was about a 17-plus foot storm surge. So, a pretty fat push of water inland. And what that left behind was a lot of debris, and 1,700 dumpster truckloads so far have been evacuated, taken out, and disposed of. But there's a lot of debris, most of that biological matter, trees, shrubs, and pines. It's a very, very there's so much water there, so things can grow in abundance. And that's what a large part of the debris was, at least thus far in this flyover video from the drones, was debris. And then, of course, we've got households, sheds, garages, yard stuff. So they kind of sort out the debris, and then we could process it accordingly and dispose of it in proper, insane ways. All right, things looking quiet for the next couple of days in the tropical Atlantic before activity picks up in early October. A lot of the models have come into consensus about that, with a high confidence exists for a tropical cyclone developing over the Western Caribbean between about 30 September through about 6 of October, with moderate confidence of another one showing up off the coast of Africa. As we wind down the season, the apex happening on 10 September, and we are now to the point where we're 25 September, 2 weeks beyond that, where about half the season, half the energy, half the number of storms still remains to be gone through. Unlikely, just my opinion, that it will be anything like what the first half has been. Once we take the wind out of the sails, it's kind of tough to catch the breeze and get the machine cranked up again. So I would anticipate that we'll have less than 5, which is still a good number. But considering we've had 24, 25 already in place, having another 5 is just a spit in the bucket, provided they're not Category 5s making landfall in New Orleans, let's just say. Indian summer here in Ventura, so says Casey. Kind of hot, 80 over 90, and Karen giving us a bit of a greetings. Glad to see you on there, Karen. You're always up and early, and a very, very dependable gal. All right, fall foliage report. As we look, patchy, greater up towards the north. We had some frost in here, 17, 18, 19 September, and that certainly got the trees kind of a kick in the behind that you got to get going on this. With fall foliage peak times late September in the darker reds, and then a little bit later to late October as we get into coastal and southern New Jersey on into the Delmarva. Still a bit, probably a month to go. But as we begin to see what's coming from back east, that might be accelerated because I'm seeing some chilly weather that begins to move out of Canada through the Rockies Sunday, Monday, and then it blasts east, and it hangs out there for every bit of 10 days. All right, fires out west, two new large fires which have required emergency response. Fires are now contained, being five. So we have 74 active fires, and I believe this number peaked at 93, 94 about a month ago. So we're beginning to see some progress in that. The rains and snows in Colorado and Wyoming and Montana, that helped greatly. There's still some fires, some big ones west of Laramie going on, still in southern Idaho, but it is the larger ones in California, which we've had a bit of a break with lighter winds and somewhat cooler temperatures. The heat's going to come back this weekend. Yeah, not what you wanted to hear, but the heat looks like it's on its way back for this weekend. All right, this is the GFS. And what it is, it's a 16-day precip anomaly right there, the QPF, quantitative precip forecast, 16-day anomaly. So that's the entirety of the run, all 384 hours. And where we see the reds were at least 2 inches shy of precip and upwards of 5.5. Where we get into the brighter oranges, and I don't see anything quite that anomalous right here, except for maybe some of the higher terrain in western Mexico. But most of the U.S., to anticipate drier than normal weather as we head on into about the 10th of October. I'm going to head over to Asia just as a curiosity to see what China looks like. Yeah, we're way above normal precip, so no relief for their flooding situation, which has gone on since the first part of June, where the rains began. And okay, good, the seasonal rains are here. Okay, it's still here, still heavy, still 1 inch, 5 inches, 10 inches in some of these incredible downpours. So that really isn't going to give them a bit of a break. So China's still under the gun. And this runs through October, 11 October. That is a long time. So June, July, August, September, and halfway through October, we're coming into our fifth full month with incredible rains happening over in China. All right, record temperatures today, from Lincoln, Nebraska, through Russell, Kansas, Dodge City, Kansas, into the high country of far northwest Texas, through Amarillo, 96 degrees, would have been broken a record of 95 set just last year, despite the period of record going all the way back to 1892, into New Mexico, continuing with that heat. A very similar setup for tomorrow. And then it kind of gets squished down into, say, Key West, and then the reaches of Northern California through Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, to be replaced by much, much cooler weather into the east. I'll get to that in just a moment. 109 in Death Valley and Octillo Wells, and then 23 at 3 locations in Colorado, Utah, and also into Maine. So that traversing the whole nation. Wow. Doesn't look like this map was updated. Or maybe we're just taking a bit of a break. Eastern Pacific, we got Lowell sitting out there, just a tropical, post-tropical cyclone just spinning around, and then the Central Pacific, that's Lowell. So this is the first time in a bit that we haven't seen any active storms going on, and the lot of dry air. That's the yellows and oranges, the dry air in the atmosphere. We're looking at the water vapor imagery. If we were to exhaust our breath, the moisture comes on out, that would be painted as a blue or a white if we actually can see the clouds, and it's rather cool from your breath. And then the surrounding air would be yellow or orange, where it is just so dry. And so what's happened is beta. There's still a little bit of that just now being shoved towards the northeast, or drawn to the northeast across the Virginias. And really the only other weather, a few thunderstorms in Florida, but it is the beginning of some rains into the Pacific Northwest. This what do they call it? An atmospheric river? Is that the term du jour right now? Is an atmospheric river. We would tend to call it a pineapple express. We want it to come from the southwest. And then that would bring in some warm snow melting, but very wet storms into the Mountain West. Back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it was just called the Pineapple Express because it came from Hawaii. All right, a couple of fires. We can begin to see one in southern Wyoming. Still, California dealing with their couple of dozen fires, and still some leftover moisture from beta as it moves to the northeast, and some thunder showers across the western lake states. But it's the rains out west. That's the cool stuff. Here's the low clouds and what that does with temperatures. Let's pop over here first. Very cool day underneath that deck of cloud cover through the southwest, southeastern states, 70s generally, 60s, 69 in Memphis on the hour. So that's not a bad way to spend a latter part of September. Certainly getting the feel of fall in the air with the clouds. And again, the absence of the sunshine, you dial back that sun coming in, and the trees say, oh, okay. I got to get thinking about this, and it's that lack of sunshine, the cooler weather that then triggers our colors. The good rains in the mountain terrains of the West. That's just really kind of the upside with that. Been there. Let's hit this. There's the showers, skipping across the Cascades and then reforming in the Panhandle of Idaho through much of Montana. All these locations, very few spots have surplus moisture. So all of this water is very, very welcome. A few showers as we move into western Wisconsin and the Arrowhead of Minnesota, where the colors have definitely turned. But Duluth, probably a bit of thunder out there within the last hour. If we haven't, if it hasn't already happened, it is on its way. And then the showers through the west. So this kind of tames the risk of fires in Oregon, certainly into Washington State, because they've had enough water that has happened. Let's pop south and see if this gets into Ashland, Medford area, where some of the larger fires are. And this is better than nothing. And I haven't heard of a lot of protests out there. I haven't heard of a lot of mischievous activity. So maybe this is taking the heat off of that particular those events. All right, a zonal flow. When we start talking about the jet stream, it's like taking something like this. It's just a zonal flow. When we get the meridional flow, we tend to get larger loops in the jet stream. And as we look at this, we can see largely a east to west flow with the jet stream just south of the U.S.-Canadian border or right along it, as it should be this time of year. North of it, typically much, much cooler. South of it, obviously, we're going to have some intrusions of warmer air, but notice how quickly we see a ridge developing just off the west coast. Pops right up, just boom, shoves all that air current into northern British Columbia, Northwest Territories, the Yukon, and so forth. And then that ridge continues to build. But in response to that, a deep low west of it, and another deep low to the east of it. So listen to the news this weekend and next week. Listen to them talk about the record heat in California. But will we talk about the snow showers in the Great Lakes states? Will we see the snows and the Aleutians? No, it'll be California that will get the news because of this heat. Now, it doesn't look like the ridge lasts more than about 7 days, and then we go zonal again. But what ends up happening is it just kind of then reconfigures, and this next time, a little more waviness action. But it is the cooler temperatures that will ultimately be brought in by that ridge. The exception being Nevada, California, the Pacific Northwest, and the Rockies. So the surge of cool air, it's kind of tough to see. This is stuff we learn in like first-year meteorology, is where to draw the fronts on these charts. We pop a high right here, 1032, and then we put the low here with the lower number here. We've got a high here, and then we find the pressure dimples, the covets, and then we just right through here, we bring the cold front that pushes all the way through the mountains, and then probably a fairly potent Santa Ana condition pushing through California. Sunday night, Monday, that might be a problem. But then this cold air surges deep into Mexico, January deep into Mexico. And all this blue, that ultimately is either a rain-snow mix or accumulating snows this time next week through the Great Lakes states, and a large chunk of eastern Canada reinforced with another surge of cool air. And it's the change of the season. Straight up, we're on the cusp. October is nearly here, and another wave of much cooler weather gets on in here. Snowfall's not all that impressive, unless you're north of the border. And I'm going to speed this up just because, so you don't have to wait on me and narrate over blank screens. But the snow's up there. Some of the higher terrain of the west, and that's to be expected. We're looking at 10, 15, or 10, 12, 13, 14,000 foot peaks. And so that's big enough to get up there, and you would expect to see the snow. But what is more interesting, well, maybe not more interesting, but what I find fascinating is how the cold over a 5-day average just kind of remains anchored in the east. Yes, the west is hot, but somebody else has to take the cold. If it's not going to be all averaged out, it's going to have to be cold. Thanks for the it kind of does, Karen. And if I had a chalkboard, things could be really kind of cool and we could share these things. But yeah, that's something I can do here where I don't have to be stuck up behind a green screen, and worse yet, stuck to 3.5 minutes. Are we getting cooler in Southern California this winter? I think there'll be episodes. And because you've had so many fires, if we want to talk geoengineering, then they'll ensure that what rain does come will come hard and fast. Maybe so fast that we see the mudslides. That's kind of a given regardless of the burn scars and where we see that kind of a burn. There's always one or two of those events where it just comes so fast and you get 8, 9, 10 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours of just a moderate to occasionally heavy rain. That would be a gift because then we could get some runoff trapped and caught in those reservoirs, and that's not usually a bad thing. But with millions of acres burned, and now we're late September, if we don't get any wetting rains ahead of time, where we can get a little grass vegetation kind of greening up, a little shoots coming up, then there's nothing to catch the debris. That's the struggle. If we could get some gentle late October rains. We take a 1-2 week break. We come back with another inch, 2 inch rain, not too much, but over 18 to 36 hours. And then we get the heavy stuff Christmas into January, even into February. That's not so bad. But we need to get some of this ground cover, some of these grasses to sprout up through this. And that's going to take a gentle rain. Will it happen? Unlikely, but it's a possibility. And that's what I would like to see happen. If you can play with the weather, then let's do it. Let's do it good. Let's do it so it benefits the ecosphere rather than damages it, where we're banging from hot to cold, from dry to saturated and flooding, that there's just so little productive time in between these extreme weather events. And we can talk about these extreme weather events being even years long in scale. Where the California drought is 3 years, we get one good year, say 15 and 16, and then we're back to drought. And then we have one terribly wet year just to put some water in the reservoirs, and then we're back to drought once again. So it's this middle road that is so difficult. And that's just where farmers and croplands can thrive. Farther east, it's a spring cold last year where the farmers planted so late. Instead of getting the corn and soybeans in the ground the first week of May, it was the first or second week of June. And then you're begging for a late summer, a warm fall. And with the changes that are happening climate wise, we may get a warm fall, but that does not mean that there isn't a big frost, say 8, 9, 10 September like this year. Or like last year, you're warm, or like 5 years ago, where you're warm all the way into November, that the plants haven't had time to shut down, to create their sugars, to go into hibernation. And then the saps are still flowing because it's warm. And then they wake up the next morning or come to awareness the next morning, and it's 10 degrees. And then the sap just freezes. And then the plant trunks and the tree branches just explode because it's so cold too soon. So that's what we've got coming. This is the next couple of days. We'll see how this eventually manifests if we actually get there. Let me update this completely. Latest run. Do a little refresh because it looks like we only got out 10 hours. And then I have to initiate the animation once again. I'm still going to speed it up. Yeah. So we get a slug of cold air. And these models, once we get out about 10 days, it's blindfold, you've had 3 beers and you're trying to shoot darts. Sometimes you get it, and sometimes you hit your buddy next to you. So that's my kind of my view. All right, guys. Garden barely grew. It makes the most sense. Yeah, Casey, where do we go as we go through these climate changes? They would have us all fleeing north. And I would want to go somewhere south and wet. East Texas, through the northern reaches of Alabama, Georgia, even the Piedmont of the Carolinas, to where you're not going to get a frost after 15 April. Maybe it is even the 1st of May, as the climate begins to settle down and the sunspots take their toll on the solar systems, the weather. It isn't just Earth; it's the whole solar system being impacted by these cycles. So that's kind of where I'd be curious to go. I mean, California is beautiful. I've had fun there, but it's California. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Take it easy, enjoy yourselves, enjoy the weather. It looks like we've got a couple of sweet days coming up, some cool weather headed through the Rockies. But east of that, you've got a chilly week ahead. So go play, finish that garden, I'm kind of a naturalist, so I kind of like to leave some leaves around just to let the moisture stay in the ground or in the grasses and the soils. I'm a little strange, but hey, you got to take it or leave it, right? Have a great, maybe do one on crop failure. If you've got a pantry, fill it. Fill it. The stuff you like, the stuff you'll eat, fill it to the limit that your budget can handle. You gotta fill it. That's just the name of the game. There's too many things that are afraid. They're just supply chains are happening. Stuff's coming in from China once again, but there's on this unease that's definitely in the air across the country, and I can't see this election going either way where we won't have deliveries interrupted. The worst scenario, and in some ways it has to happen so we can get to something on the other side, is a currency issue. And if the banks aren't lending, then the gas pumps aren't going, and fill your pantry. Casey, love you guys. Fill your pantries. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you on Monday. I really kind of have this sense that on another perspective, we'll be talking about Q and QAnon. I'm rounding up some guests, and we'll probably have a panel discussion, probably four of us. And the topic has fascinated me for the better part of 2.5 years, and I think it's worthy of discussion since it is, well, obviously it's worthy of discussion because there's so many people involved in it, and red pills are very interesting, to take. All right, catch you on Monday. Have a great weekend. In the meantime,